Ladies and gentlemen, our limestone legend spotlight here has come in. Coach T. Jackson, former Athens High School girls basketball coach, and I got to ask him a little second ago off the air, how long have you been coaching, Coach? And you said you had to think about it a little bit. And
42 years in altogether, and 22, I guess it's 32 of those were in administration, but some of that was administration and coaching. So I would guess about 18 years of coaching basketball.
What's some of your best memories?
Well, I got a lot of them. I thought if I could take a minute, I'd just give you a little history over there.
I tell you what, you take 2 minutes. How about that?
Back in the early 70s at Athens High School, cheerleading and band was about the only thing the girls had. They didn't have anything else to participate in, and a lot of them enjoyed City Rec, and that was just getting started good. But one of the biggest events for girls at that time was just the presidential physical fitness test.
Yes, remember those.
Everybody had to do that. So, but in, say, 1972, you had ladies like Beverly Crutcher and Myra King, just different ones that were working with the girls. And Myra started competition for athletic competition back in 1972, and that was the first year that the girls actually got to compete. It wasn't like a team with a regular schedule, and they didn't have a conference, and they didn't play, like before the boys' teams or anything like that. But they had what they call the Girls Athletic Association. There were several teams in the area, like Sheffield and Bradshaw, different ones that would have a team. So they would say, let's start an association, and we'll play some competition just among ourselves. And so really the first major thing, I guess, was in 1973. Myra King said, well, let's take our girls and go to the state track meet. And they went down and became state champions at the track meet in 1973.
Well, we're not doing anything this weekend. Why don't we take a few girls down and run?
Win the thing. She said she had some awful good ones, and she mentioned Patsy Parker and some of the different girls that participated. I spoke with her yesterday just trying to make sure I had my years right, because I was over doing other things. I was in Florida and Georgia, Birmingham, Samford University, different things, while that was going on in the early 70s.
Right.
And I came there in 77. A lot of interesting things happened there. I was teaching and coaching at Samford University, and I had the varsity golf team, and we were giving scholarships to the men's team and that sort of thing, going on tours and coaching the girls' basketball team at Samford. Really enjoyed that. And one afternoon, about 4 o'clock, I had one of those things, I call them spiritual calls, where I felt like the Lord was speaking to me, and I went to my office, and I shut the door, and I sat down, and I said, Lord, what is it you're trying to tell me? I didn't hear a voice, but I had a strong urge to pick up the phone and call Athens and tell them you're available August 17th. Now, this was in January of 77. And I'm thinking, okay, Lord, now, Athens, Georgia, Athens, Alabama, Athens, Tennessee, what is it you want me to do? And I had a strong urge to call Athens High School, Athens, Alabama, and tell them you'll be available August 17th. And I thought, well, why August 17th? There's no reason for that, and that was January.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, that developed. I called, and a lady named Mickey Yokel was the secretary.
Miss Yokel. Remember her, Miss Yokel, very well.
I didn't know anybody at Athens High School, but I called information, got the number. She answered around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and I said, I'd like to speak to your school principal, but I need his name. And so she said, his name's Marvin Clem, and he's still here just a minute. So Marvin Clem came to the phone. I told him who it was. I said, I'm not looking for a job, but I've coached in several schools in 3-4 states already, and I've worked with the girls' athletic program and got a good opportunity now to go to Bay County in Florida, Rutherford High School, Mosley, Bay County High School, and be their athletic director for girls' athletics. And I said, they want me to come coordinate it for the whole county down there. And I said, you may have some needs for girls' athletics. And he said, well, no, I don't have any. We've got 3 ladies working in it, and we don't have any openings. What do you teach, and that sort of thing. And I said, well, I feel like we ought to talk. And he said, I do too. So we met 2 weeks later in front of the school in his little green pickup truck.
Yeah.
And I just told him about the spiritual call I had. Anyway, to make a shorter story, 3 different times in the spring, he would call me and say, well, how are you Thursday night? And I said, well, I'm not available till August 17th. Well, why? I don't know. I can come August 17th. And so anyway, he asked me to come speak to the board, and I spoke to the board, and they offered to hire me that night, and they were very nice about it. And so anyway, it was just an interesting thing. I guess the reason for August 17th was Sanford University had some things going. They wanted me to be their dean of the School of Church Recreation. And they had asked me to stay and not leave the contract I had. And so that was their date, that I found out later. And that was kind of an interesting thing, too. But we came, my wife and I, and just, think, okay, we felt we're supposed to go. So we came to Athens in fall of 77. And from there, so I was coaching 3 basketball teams, 2 track and field teams, and 3 volleyball teams, and, teaching physical education and doing things like that. But meeting wonderful people, just wonderful people, salt of the earth folks. Mm-hmm. And I wrote down some of them just, I don't want to leave anybody out or anything, but I was thinking about people, if you knew Gerald Perry,
yes, sir.
Folks like that, that's the kind of people I was getting to know. And there's so many of them. Miss Latham, who's Janet Radford, if you know her. And, of course, Bernard Hendricks had come there, too, and Jerry Todd. Coach Coggin had been our coach. And we had so many great people in the school, Marvin Clem and his staff. And so it really was a blessing. Faye Garrison was doing so much for the girls. She was kind of their mother and, their guardian and everything, their doctor, whole shebang. She was just holding it together for the girls' program. And Myra had gotten them started and ordered some uniforms, and that had one year where there was some competition. And, of course, you could tell they all respected Myra and hated for her to leave. But those 3 ladies that Mr. Clem said were working with the program all left one at a time, while I was telling them I could come on August 17th. So quite an interesting story for me, and it's been a blessing, to me and my family through the years. But when I think back, there were so many issues, like, are we going to play with the small ball or the big ball?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And see, that was such a big issue. And Fred Sinkton's across the street, was trying to sell the small ball because all the sporting goods stores had been told that the girls in Alabama were going to use a smaller ball. Well, the girls didn't want a smaller ball. They knew what a basketball was. And, of course, as the new coach, I'm thinking, well, I got to order some basketballs. What are we going to order? So I called Bubba Scott, who was the executive director of the state association, and I knew him. And I said, which ball are we going to use? And he said, well, we've been discussing that, and we're going to meet next Thursday and try to decide. And he said, what do you suggest? I said, well, the same ball that the boys, it's basketball. And it's the same thing in Georgia, same thing in Tennessee. Why would you do something different in Alabama, and mess up all the college games? So that was a big issue. They kept calling me back and asking me, well, is this just your opinion or who else's opinion? Of course, we were just getting started. There really wasn't many people to call and talk to about that kind of issue. The sporting goods stores seemed to want to sell the small one because they could sell more basketballs, I guess.
Oh, absolutely.
And the players were thinking, well, we just want to play basketball. But I thought, since Southeastern Conference didn't have teams, Tennessee didn't even have a team, back then.
Wow.
So it was really kind of a dilemma. And this is what they told me, and it's unbelievable they said this, but after a week or two after they had met, they said, well, we've decided there's so much controversy about this that we've decided that we're going to let the home team decide which ball you play with. And I thought, now that is not, I said, you're not telling me that. Really, surely you're not going to, but that's what they said. So anyway, after a while, they decided they were going to go with the regular-sized ball, and we were so glad that we didn't play with the small one. And, of course, their whole argument was, well, in track and field, the discus is smaller for the girl's hand. Mm-hmm. The shot weighs 8 pounds and not 12. There are some differences already, so why would you not do it with the basketball? And they can move the ball quicker and, that sort of thing, shoot farther. But that was a big issue and felt like we had a big say-so in that because we were one of the only teams already established. There were some other issues like when softball came along. We're going to do slow pitch or fast pitch.
Yeah.
And people got angry in a hurry about that. When, the local leagues wanted the fast pitch. And so many of the teams in the south of Alabama wanted the slow pitch. And the teams in the north wanted fast pitch. And so we really had a big issue with that.
How'd you work it out?
Well, it was one of those things where the state made the decision. And they went, when they asked me, and then they asked me to come down there and meet with them and just discuss it. And, of course, I had coached in Florida, Georgia, Tennessee, and now Alabama, and I'd coached girls athletics. And in Georgia and Tennessee, you know, they're just wild about basketball and stuff and girls basketball, and every generation had played, you know. Everybody's great-grandmother, you know, was a forward or a guard. They played 3-on-3. And I'd coached in Georgia, and like when I went to Georgia and was coaching girls basketball, we would come out of our locker room, and we had 318 kids in the band when you counted all the flags and stuff.
Wow.
You'd have to come through a hallway. We'd dribble the ball, had 2 radio stations up in the air, and we'd have to dribble the ball all the way down the court and all the way across the court and then all the way back down the court and all the way back in the middle, and then wait for the band to march off with their flags and drum lines so we could warm up. It was just that exciting, see. So I came to Athens, and you'd look up at the area tournament, and there's maybe 10 people in the crowd, you know.
Yeah,
it was just so different. You see the difference in tradition. So for them to say, well, what kind of, you know, ball you want to use, we'll let the home team decide. You know, I thought, oh, no, you know, you don't understand. So those were some issues that came along. I had an opinion on everything. We shared it. Miss Myra King and those that came on before me definitely had an opinion, and they shared theirs. If you know Myra, she's quite an athlete anyway. Probably even today she could get out there and run track and beat most of the girls in 100-meter dash. But so she was very athletic and very much attuned, and I'm sure she had some influence also. People like Nuna Kennard, Mr. Williams out at East Limestone, Coach Williams, I'm trying to think of his first name. Stan Williams, was one of the early coaches, and of course Mr. and Miss Kennemer coached out at West Limestone. So many different ones that you know, meant a lot to the program in North Alabama.
Coach, I was going to ask you, how was it? Because I remember at the time when I was in school, you were not only head basketball coach, but you were also assistant principal.
Right. So
how hard was that juggling both of those? Being a coach to these kids, but then you also had to be a disciplinarian also as their assistant principal.
That wasn't a problem for me at all, because discipline was, you know, that's very important. Important.
I remember Coach Jackson.
Okay.
You got me one time. I remember.
Discipline was you got to be firm but fair, and so that wasn't a problem at all. Now, as far as wear and tear on me, with all the administrative duties and, like, you know, being at the corn show and being at the ham dinners and being, you know, somebody's got to be there to supervise all the different activities and athletics. I know it was, you know, 106, 108 hours on campus pretty much, you know, every week. And so it was round the clock. So when you park those buses, you know, on a Tuesday night at 11 o'clock over at the stadium, you know, you had, you're lucky to get home, you know, for 5-6 hours before you turn around and came back. I was usually the first one there. Wilson Blair used to get there early in the morning.
Absolutely.
Yeah, he'd get there first.
He'd get there, and we'd see each other in the lobby each morning. So
cool. Well, what are you doing now, Coach?
I'm a pastor out at Shanghai First Baptist Church, really enjoying that. After I left Athens High School, I went to be superintendent of schools in Giles County for 10 years. Yep. Really enjoyed that, and came back, and John Plunk and Doug Moan have a nursing home over across from the hospital right beside Athens Pharmacy.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
And they hired my wife and I, Jackie, to work with them. So we worked there for 3.5 years, and they made me executive director over there. I really enjoyed that and put me in charge of the whole thing, and it was quite a blessing. I went over there to be chaplain, and boy, they have a wonderful staff over there, just a great bunch of people. Anyway, while I was there, I went ahead and agreed to be kind of an interim pastor, and now they've made me pastor at Shanghai First Baptist Church. That's out in the Owens community.
We know where Shanghai is very well.
River Mills. Really enjoying doing that, and it's the Lord's work. And I heard somebody say one time, and I believe it's true, the only thing that really matters on earth is Jesus. You know, what are you going to do with Jesus? And when he asked that question, who do you say that I am? You know, you already asked him, who do they say that I am? And they said, well, some think Moses or Elijah or John the Baptist, but who do you say that I am? And if you get that question right, you know, life seems to be a whole lot better.
Yes, sir. That's right. Absolutely. Absolutely. So, talking back about your coaching career, who are some of the girls you remember coaching that really stand out in your memory?
I think I remember every one of them. Yeah, I really do. And, of course, like this morning.
My sister played for you one year, I think, at least one year.
And it seems like almost everywhere I go, like in town, you know, somebody saying, hello, Coach Jackson, and I've had that probably 8 times this morning. And just love people, you know, and just love the children. And there's a mental, a physical, and a spiritual. And, you know, I've always felt like it, if you're not happy and kind of understand all three areas, you can't genuinely be happy. You really need to know who you are, where you came from, and where you're going. And mentally, physically, spiritually, all those are important. I think of the most sought-after player, I guess, that I had the privilege to be around was Mary Fletcher. And I know Pat Head Summit called my home 2 nights, different times, and she'd say, "I've got to have her." And I said, "Well, I'm going to bring her up there." So she wanted to play volleyball and basketball, and University of Tennessee volleyball coach said, "No, either play volleyball, but if you're going to play basketball, we don't need you because we just can't share you." Of course, she would have played softball and run track and everything if they'd let her. But she ended up going to West Georgia. On the same day we left Tennessee, we went down to West Georgia, and when we pulled into the gates, if you've never been to Carrollton, Georgia, West Georgia, there's a little hump inside, a little rise. And we pulled into the gates, and there was probably 18 to 20 college athlete girls on that hill when we pulled in. They were 20 yards in front of us. And they all ran down the hill and just covered up the car, and I just had to put my foot on the brake and think, okay, don't hit anybody.
Don't run over any.
And they were knocking on the windows and saying, Mary, come go with us. And so anyway, one of them came around to the window, and she smiled at me. She said, "Now, Coach, we'll have her back here at 4 o'clock, so you can pick her up at 4. I thought, well, it's 10:30.
What am I going to do for the next 6 hours?
And so I thought, okay, I'll be right here. And so they spent the day with those girls, and she wanted to spend the night. She said, I just want to stay right here. So really felt at home. But the interesting thing about that was, Carrollton, Georgia, at that time, West Georgia was one of the finer teams in the country. And that fall, maybe 2 falls later, they had the first national championship for NCAA girls basketball. Leon Barmore, Louisiana Tech.
Yeah, I remember.
Kim Mulkey was the point guard.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
well,
sir.
see, in the quarterfinals of that game, Louisiana Tech beat West Georgia, which had Mary on it. And Mary had 21 points and 18 rebounds.
Wow.
And I think they won by 1 point. So, Mary was a very, very influential player. And she played in Japan and different places, volleyball with the Olympic teams. She was really a good volleyball player. But anyway, I think I remember them all, and they're just all precious, and all of them added to the team.
Absolutely. That's great.
Well, Coach, it has been an awesome time reminiscing with you, and thank you so much for coming in here and joining us, and may see you out at Shanghai one of these days.
Well, come on out to the friendly congregation out there.
Joel don't like to let folks from First Baptist go visiting too much, so he keeps us reined in there.
Now, he's my pastor, too.
I know.
And, so he is a friend of Shanghai. Matter of fact, he was saved and baptized at Shanghai.
He was.
And his Sunday school teacher where he was saved, she was his teacher, is still a very prominent member.
That's
who's
good.
Always there, very faithful. So, Lord blesses everywhere you'll allow him to.
Absolutely. Come back sometime. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to toss it off to our sponsors. You're listening to Applebee's Tailgate Talk on WKAC, the Big 1080.